Tennessee taking on the Gators under the lights at Ben Hill Griffin Stadium this weekend, and we get the latest from our good friend Austin Price of VolQuest.com every Tuesday morning at 7:20. What's up, Austin? How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you all?
Good.
We are doing good. We are better than the way Tennessee's receivers looked on Saturday against Austin Peay. 5 drops, a disjointed offense, the lowest amount of points ever in a home win for Tennessee under Josh Heupel. How do you explain the performance for Tennessee on Saturday?
Well, I mean, you can explain it a few different ways. I mean, just being out of rhythm, being out of sync, the delay, playing an FCS opponent. At the end of the day, though, it's still simply pitch and catch, right? I mean, like I get like you might be off a little here and there. Joe had a few bad passes, and then he had a few other passes that were, I would call them 6 or 7s out of 10 that the receiver got, 2 hands on that they just didn't catch. And, they've got to be better. And, there's no doubt about it. I think Tennessee has held some stuff back offensively. They've been really vanilla through the first 2 weeks. I would expect that to drastically change this weekend. But you still have to execute. They can scheme them up and get guys wide open. There were guys wide open Saturday. You still have to connect and really be good in your fundamentals. So, I think Tennessee, will bring a better game, as far as more focus to Florida Saturday. But how do they execute? Is Joe in better rhythm? Do the receivers catch the ball? Does the offensive line, hold up? Does the running backs, not miss a pass pro, when they're trying to take a deep shot like they did Saturday? All that stuff, determines whether Tennessee has success Saturday or not against a Florida team that's not very good, but still plenty capable of beating you. And Tennessee fans know that they should have won several games in the last 15 years in this series, and yet they haven't.
In Austin, it's interesting because you go back in a year exactly, and Tennessee was underwhelming in a Week 2 win over Pittsburgh. Obviously, that's a much bigger test, a much better opponent than Austin Peay. No disrespect to them, but the mood changed quickly in that locker room after a win against Florida and going into that week against Florida in Neyland Stadium last year. What do you think the mood in that locker room is right now, Austin, as they diagnose some of those issues and just try to figure things out, have a little bit of a come-to-Jesus moment so early in the season?
Well, I think that, the mood is one of determination and focus. To have a quote-unquote players-only meeting, and that stuff happens a lot. Like that's, much more is made of it because Tennessee beat Austin Peay 30-13. Tennessee went that game 63-3, and one of the coaches leave the room. A few leaders step up and say, "Man, this is Florida week. We got to be focused." That's technically about the same thing that happened, over here over the weekend, and no one would say anything about it. But because Tennessee only won 30-13, it's much is made of it, and I think that they are a focused team. It still just boils down to simple execution heading into this game, and I think that defensively Tennessee is good enough because through 2.5, almost 3 quarters, Tennessee gave up 123 yards. To Austin Peay. They ended up giving up like 360, but a lot of that was against, third and fourth stringers in the fourth quarter. For my liking, I think Tennessee's defense will keep them in most every game, and I think this one's no different. And so this boils down to how does the offense execute. If it executes really, really well, I think Tennessee can win this game by 2 touchdowns. If it doesn't, this could be a narrow Florida win. That's kind of where I'm at with this game. I think this is either going to be a really, tight game where, you've almost favored Florida because of their history in this series, or something like 95 Alabama or 92 Florida.
Yeah. Austin, man, fairness is a word that's not really associated with sports when it comes down to performance and stuff like that. But I was talking to one of my reps about the way we view Hendon and the way we view Joe. I feel like we're conditioned to believe Joe, if a pass is off by, a foot or two, then it's all him and the receivers, not supposed to catch the ball. But if it was Hendon, we'd be blaming the wide receivers more than anything. Is that fair or unfair to Joe to say we're kind of conditioned to think that he's going to go back to old Joe?
Well, I think it's totally fair. Everyone's conditioned that way because of the Pittsburgh game 2 years ago. And, the fact they had Tennessee had them schemed up and had receivers running wide open, and Joe kept overthrowing them. And, Tennessee fans can't get that out of their head. Again, he was not on his P's and Q's Saturday. I mean, he hit him in the hands, but McAllen Castles should have caught that first ball that was thrown to him. It was thrown behind. If Joe hits him in stride, he may score on that play, which he ends up scoring later. But I mean, those are little things that you have to be better at on the road. And maybe that's as simple as that, right? I mean, they focus a little more in. Joe's a little more dialed in, but I also understand the people that said he is who he is at this point. And, when you look at the difference between the two, I do think you've hit the nail on the head. Everybody's going to compare him. And that's not really fair, right? Because they're two different players, two different quarterbacks, and they lead two different ways. And so, we'll see what Joe you get. Joe has put himself in a position because of his off-season comments about he never loses in the state of Florida. That'll get thrown around this week if Tennessee doesn't win this football game. If they do, then Tennessee's got a great chance to go into the bye week at 5-0, which at that point means you're a Texas A&M away, Texas A&M win away from realistically knowing you're going into the month of November with a real chance to win the East. And so that's everything this team wants to accomplish is right there in front of it, but it all starts Saturday with a game. Again, you've not won on the road since 2003. I was in college. Will was in diapers. I don't know how old Kayla is. I'll say Kayla was close to diapers.
Oh, thanks,
Ramon,
Austin.
you were probably like a senior in high school at the time.
I was.
You know what I mean? Like, when you start putting it in terms of like where everything was in 2003, it's depressing.
I remember where I was watching the Hail Mary at the end of the first half. I was in first grade, Austin, to be exact, unfortunately.
Golly.
That is right, Will. You're a little older. Wes was getting up there. But Wes,
Yep. My brother was a freshman at UT that year. So, yeah, the 100%. Yeah.
Austin, we don't have to go down that road, okay? We didn't have to mark us with timestamps like that, man. We're getting older.
My timestamp started when I had kids, and they are my markers on life. I knew I had my first one when I was 30. If she was 10, I'd be 40, and she's 10. So exciting times ahead.
No doubt, man. I'll ask you this going on the road for sure. I think this group has a little bit more left in his boat. I mean, in his back pocket too. But the O-line, getting Cooper back this week, what does that do for the snap count, the stability of that group, and honestly, settling up other positions, not center?
Well, I just think you feel like the best way to put this is like even if Cooper's not. Even if he's able to play, and I think it's trending that way. I don't think it's far-fetched to say he's going to play Saturday. I also don't think it's a lock, but I think it's definitely trending that way. He has put a ton of work in the tubs and in the pool and just pushing sleds, and we'll head to the practice field right about now. To really kind of go through a full practice for the first time. But I think it just when you're Spraggs and you look to your left and there's Cooper, you're like, all right. It's just like, you know what I mean? Like it's like that trusty old, utensil used at home that you've used for years. I mean, you look to you know what Cooper's about. Not that Ollie has done a bad job, because Ollie's done, I think, a really solid job through 2 weeks. But getting Cooper, I think, back helps just the thought process, the comfort level for Joe, for the offensive lineman beside of Cooper. And, other than that, I don't think it changes a whole lot. I'm interested what they continue to do at right tackle. I would say they'll continue to split time between Crawford and Mincy, but, Spraggs is your right guard. And, Carrick looks like he's definitely locked down the left guard spot for now. And obviously John Campbell is your left tackle. So I think it's just more about just the comfort level that Cooper brings. And we'll see if he's able to go Saturday, but I think it definitely feels like it's trending that way.
Austin Price joining us now. And Austin, just another thing that they want to continue to prove upon, and I know that's something that Josh Heupel was asked about, but just maybe why the offense hasn't been able to be as good on third down through 2 games.
Yeah, it feels like every year there's something. Like this year they've struggled on third down. They struggled in the first quarter. 2 years ago, Heupel's first year, they struggled in the second quarter. So it always feels like there's, some kind of bugaboo just because you start analyzing every little thing. Where's the weakness, right?
Yeah.
And this year it's been third down efficiency. And I think part of that is, Tennessee's, put themselves behind the sticks on certain plays. And, last week, their inability to go down the field in the passing game, I think, really hurt them. They, after, first couple of drives, they basically just started throwing east and west and not hitting anything vertically. And, I think that hurt them and hurt their third down efficiency. And, again, the passing game's been a little bit out of sync. And they've had 3, I believe, 3rd and 1s that have just gotten blown up.
Yeah.
And if you go back a year ago, they were so good in 3rd and short. And, again, different offensive linemen, different quarterback, little things like that matter. But, they've got to be better in short yardage, because the ability to pick up a 3rd and 1 or a 4th and 1 to extend a drive on the road in Gainesville could mean the difference between victory and coming home 2-1.
The Swamp is an interesting place. I got the chance to go there when I first moved here to Nashville, and it was a day game, but it was still just incredible in terms of the atmosphere. And, I'm sure they're going to get that going down there on Saturday. Austin, when it comes to this Gators team, a lot of athletes, a lot of speed there, but how big is it to just first and foremost focus on bottling up that run game to not set up for the play action?
Yeah, Florida, they fell behind at Utah. They weren't able to run the ball a whole lot, and Utah really did a nice job of shutting down the Florida running game, and I think that's where they won the football game.
Mm-hmm.
Last week, obviously, McNeese State not nearly as talented as Utah. Florida able to get the running game going. Tennessee's defensive line has been really effective. They're going to look to shut down Florida's running game early and often. Because I think you want to put the ball in Graham Mertz's hands and make him beat you.
Yep.
And just like kind of right now with Tennessee being kind of out of sync offensively, don't you think they'll go load the box and say Jalen Wright and Jabari Small aren't going to beat us? If anybody's going to beat us, it's Joe Milton. We're going to make Joe show us he can complete passes vertically, and then we'll adjust. And same thing I think is going to happen with Tennessee's defense against Florida's offense. And so the crowd will be into it early. That they will be into the football game early because it's Florida and Tennessee, and they want to continue their run of 20-plus years of winning in the Swamp against Tennessee. But this Florida fan base is really looking for a reason to leave, in my opinion. Like, if Tennessee comes out and jumps on them early like they did at LSU last year, I think Florida fans are looking for a reason just to say, I'm done, and walk out the door. So I think this is, Tennessee, that first quarter is huge. On both sides of the ball, because if Tennessee can get off to a good start and get a little bit of momentum and start flying around to the ball in defense and make some plays on offense, and I think there's a real chance to, quieten the swamp, drain the swamp, so to speak, early on.
Austin, have you been surprised about Dante Thornton's usage so far? Why do you think we haven't seen more of him being involved in this Tennessee offense?
That's a great question. You go back, he played a lot more against Virginia than this past week. I mean, he played basically 2 series, and that was it. And, had the drop. And, it is a bit puzzling just because Joey Halsley and Kelsey Pope and Josh Heupel, I mean, Halsley called him a freak in fall camp. Well, I mean, don't you normally put your freaks on the field?
Right.
I mean, it just seems odd. I mean, I don't know if it's something that he's been doing, that the staff hasn't liked as far as his route running or just the drop. I mean, if you go, not play kid because they dropped the ball, and you'd be rolling with some walk-on receivers because all the receivers have dropped passes at this point. So, I do think the usage seems a bit odd just because of how they built him up in the off season. We'll see if he gets a little bit more run on Saturday.
Austin, Boot Carter is taking an unofficial visit to Colorado this weekend. Big in-state target and commitment for Tennessee right now. How big of a worry is that for Tennessee at this point on the recruiting front?
Well, I think that anytime you have one of your better players in your class going to another school, that's a bit of a worry, right? I mean, Colorado's got the juice right now, and Deion's going to be preaching that Boot can be the Travis Hunter of this year's class and play both ways. I think it's something you have to be very cognizant of and be very aware of. There are some things that still just line up for Tennessee, in my opinion, there. But I definitely think that Tennessee has to be on point with Boo and their messaging. I do think that, having an offensive package for him probably does, help ease some thought process there, because I think he would like to have the ball in his hands some. I'm not saying he wants to play offense full time, because I don't think that's the case, but he looks around, he sees what Travis Hunter's doing, and is like, why can't I, catch a, screen pass or take an end around or whatever. I mean, I'd advocate that they ought to be doing that with D. Williams. I asked John Heupel about it. He shot it down, but it's like he literally is like 12th in the depth chart at DB. And he's basically just a kick returner and punt returner. Why not say, all right, when you go in the game on offense, you're taking an end around. Yeah. We'll only use this once or twice, and that's your deal. I mean, like, I guess sometimes I don't understand certain lines of thinking, but hey, they have their thought process and they're the coach. So, with Boo, I think that they're very aware. I think they were in contact with him last night when that news came out. And, again, I think you just have to survive visits and get him back up here as quickly as possible, likely for the South Carolina game.
One guy that's been effective as ever and on the defense side of the ball, I just want to highlight, man, Omar Norman-Lott. How big of a pickup was that out of the portal and for himself also? Because even when he's not making plays, he's effective as heck.
He is so disruptive, Ramon. I mean, he is and just such a big personality. Like, I got to know the kid when he was in the transfer portal, and, he came on his visit, and we sat down over at the hotel and did an interview. And he's such a great kid. Big smile, big personality, just loves being here. Like, and I would imagine, right, you're going from Arizona State, no knock on the Sun Devils, but the atmosphere and, at Arizona State and the atmosphere here is just two different things. And he came up to me Saturday and was like, hey, man, he put his arm around me, and literally he was drenched with sweat. And, Ramon, you've been in the football locker room for years. You know that smell, right? That football locker room smell. And my whole left shoulder was drenched, like I had been in a pool. And I was like, man, I smell like a football locker room now. and he's just like, man, smile, cheer up. And I was like, I'm fine. I mean, he's just so infectious. And his play is even more infectious because he has been super disruptive. And that Rabbits package of James Pierce, Tyler Barron, and Omar Norman-Lott has been dynamite through 2 weeks. I mean, I really think had Omar not missed time in fall camp, he would have started against Virginia in the opener. But because he missed time and Tyler Barron missed time, those two did not start the game because they had missed, significant time in fall camp, but then they quickly came in. I would expect them to be, as long as they continue to do what they do, locked-in starters going forward. And, Omar has just, again, been super disruptive and really, really good. And I know Coach Garner would love to have him around for a year or two, but if he keeps playing this way, I would say he'll be a one and done.